She was truly detested by Ringo Starr more than anyone else. Born Richard Starkey on July 7, 1940, in the working-class district of Dingle, Liverpool, England, Ringo Starr would rise from such modest beginnings to become one of the best-loved figures in popular music history. His early life was touched by hardship. Financial struggles and serious health issues plagued his childhood. As a young boy, Ringo spent long stretches in hospitals recovering from illnesses like peritonitis and tuberculosis that kept him away from school and delayed his education. But even these tough times forged his unbreakable spirit and deep appreciation for life. During his long stays in hospital, he would drum on tables and bedpans, unknowingly laying the foundation for his destiny to be one of the world's most iconic drummers. Before achieving international fame, Ringo had worked as an apprentice joiner and as a machine operator in a Liverpool factory. His passion for music, however, could not be suppressed. Inspired initially by skiffle and early rock and roll, he took up playing drums with local bands until joining Rory Storm and the Hurricanes, eventually becoming one of Liverpool's leading groups. His dynamic drumming style, combined with his cheerful personality, easily made him unforgettable. By 1962, destiny came calling. When the Beatles' original drummer Pete Best was fired, Ringo was invited to join John Lennon, Paul McCartney, and George Harrison. His arrival completed the lineup destined to change the course of music history forever. During his years as drummer of the Beatles, Ringo Starr became renowned for his steady, reliable beat, his inventive fills, and his unique way with time. Though he often kept himself in the background, Ringo's musical contribution was essential to the band's characteristic sound. Songs like Ticket to Ride, Rain, and A Day in the Life showed his ability to enhance melodies with subtle, yet powerful rhythm work. Besides drumming, his warm personality and comedic charm made him the favorite of many fans. He also became a lead singer on several Beatles songs, including With a Little Help from My Friends, Yellow Submarine, and Octopus's Garden. Each of these reflected his appealing, sweet nature and wonder as a child. When the Beatles disbanded in 1970, Ringo Starr refused to become a background player. Rather, he forged his own path by embarking on a solo career that proved he was more than just a drummer in a famous band. His debut solo albums, Sentimental Journey, 1970, and Bocas of Blues, 1970, showed his versatility and deep appreciation for different musical genres, including pop, country, and jazz standards. Immediately upon its release, his 1973 album Ringo became an international blockbuster success, producing hit singles like Photograph and You're 16, which topped the charts throughout the world. His friendly, relatable style resonated deeply with audiences, and his collaborations with his former Beatles bandmates demonstrated the enduring bond they shared even after the band's breakup. Beyond his musical achievements, Ringo Starr nurtured a successful concurrent career in acting and film. He appeared in several movies, including Caveman, 1981, That'll Be the Day, 1973, and The Magic Christian, 1969, with Peter Sears. His natural comedic timing and down-to-earth personality made him an appealing presence both on-screen and off. In later years, he also became a narrator and voice actor for children's television, most notably lending his voice to the beloved series Thomas the Tank Engine and Friends, with which he introduced a new generation of fans to the warm, engaging storylines. In the decades that followed, Ringo continued to tour and record, performing with his all-star band, a rotating lineup of celebrated musicians from various generations. His concerts became joyous celebrations of music, unity, and friendship, blending Beatles classics with his solo hits and the songs of his bandmates. His influence as a drummer also continued to grow, with countless artists citing him as an inspiration for his precision, musicality, and understated brilliance. In recognition of his contributions to music and culture, Ringo was knighted by Queen Elizabeth II in 2018, officially becoming Sir Richard Starkey, an honor long overdue for a man who helped shape modern popular music. Ringo Starr's romantic life reflects both the turbulence of his years as a world-famous Beatle and the enduring strength of love he found later in life. His two marriages, first to Maureen and later to Barbara Bach, represent very different chapters of his personal journey, each marked by distinct emotions, challenges, and personal growth. Ringo's first marriage was to Maureen, a Liverpool-born hairdresser who had been a devoted fan of the Beatles before she met him. Their story began in the early 1960s when Beatlemania was exploding across the globe. Maureen and Ringo met at the Cavern Club, the famous underground venue where the Beatles honed their craft and built their earliest fan base. Maureen was just a teenager when they met, and despite the overwhelming chaos that surrounded the band, their affection for one another grew quickly. Ringo, known for his warmth and humor, was deeply attracted to Maureen's grounded nature. Unlike many others drawn to his fame, she saw him as Richard Starkey, the man behind the drums, not just Ringo Starr, the international sensation. The two married on February 11th, 1965 at the height of the Beatles' fame. Their wedding caused a media frenzy as thousands of fans gathered outside the registry office, hoping to catch a glimpse of the newlyweds. Inside, the ceremony was intimate and emotional, attended by close friends and family, including fellow Beatles John Lennon and George Harrison. Maureen's loyalty and strength during those years were remarkable. While Ringo toured the world and faced the pressures of superstardom, Maureen maintained their home life in England, often shielding him and their growing family from the overwhelming spotlight. The couple went on to have 3 children, Zach, Jason, and Lee Starkey. Zach would later follow in his father's footsteps, becoming a respected drummer in his own right and performing with iconic bands like The Who and Oasis. When the years went by and the Beatles broke up in 1970, serious strains began to emerge in the marriage. Fame, long separations, and the temptations of the rock and roll lifestyle took a heavy toll. Ringo has himself admitted that he struggled at this period, turning to alcohol and living a wild, chaotic lifestyle when the Beatles broke up. Despite Maureen's efforts to hold the family together, their relationship became increasingly remote. Their marriage officially ended in 1975, though they remained connected through their children and mutual respect. Maureen would eventually die in 1994 from leukemia at just 48 years old. Her death hit Ringo hard, as he was present during her final days. He later said she had been one of the most genuine and caring people he had ever known, a true part of his life that he would always carry with him. It wouldn't be until many years later, after much soul-searching and personal transformation, that Ringo would again find love, this time with Barbara Bach, an actress and model best known for her role as the Bond girl Anya Amasova in the 1977 James Bond film The Spy Who Loved Me. The two met in 1980 on the set of the adventure comedy film Caveman, in which they both starred. The chemistry was instantaneous and unmistakable. Ringo would later recall their meeting as love at first sight and said Barbara brought a calmness, elegance, and emotional stability into his life that was vastly different from the turbulence of his earlier years. Their relationship blossomed quickly, and the two were married on April 27, 1981, in a lavish ceremony at Marylebone Town Hall in London, the same place where Paul McCartney had married Linda Eastman more than a decade prior. Friends, family, and fellow musicians came out in droves to celebrate the union of two people who had found their peace and companionship within each other. Barbara became a significant influence in helping Ringo confront his struggles with addiction. In the late 1980s, both Ringo and Barbara entered rehab together, a decision that changed their lives. Ringo often credits Barbara for saving him both emotionally and physically, saying her support and love were instrumental in his journey towards sobriety and stability. Throughout the decades, their marriage has remained one of the most enduring and admired in the entertainment industry. Despite the pressures of fame, Ringo and Barbara have built a quiet and meaningful life together, splitting their time between homes in England, Monaco, and Los Angeles. They are known for their shared interest in humanitarian causes, particularly in support of environmental protection and addiction recovery programs. Barbara and Ringo also share a deep commitment to peace and love, a philosophy Ringo often expresses through his art and music. Through the years, the Beatles have been regarded as the epitome of musical brotherhood, for young men from Liverpool who changed the world together. Yet, behind the fame and unity that captured millions, tensions often brewed within the band, some of them running deeper than the public ever realized. For Ringo Starr, the quiet Beatle George Harrison was someone he admired, respected, and played alongside through the group's rise to immortality. But over time, personal slights, jealousy, and betrayal began to creep into their relationship, leading Ringo to later admit that he'd harbored more anger toward George than anyone else in his life. "George was like a brother to me," Ringo once said. "But sometimes brothers fight harder than enemies ever do." Those words carried years of unspoken tension. Though Ringo was often seen as the peacekeeper of the Beatles, his calm exterior masked frustrations that built up during their years of stardom. Ringo had joined the group last, replacing Pete Best in 1962, and quickly found himself in a whirlwind of fame. George, who had been there since the beginning with John Lennon and Paul McCartney, often made Ringo an outsider not cruelly, but rather with the subtle, superior air of someone who had been there first. George could be distant, Ringo recalled. He had his world, his spirituality, and sometimes made me feel like I wasn't part of it. It all boiled over during the later Beatles years when personal egos and creative ambitions started pulling the group apart. George, anxious for songwriting recognition, felt overshadowed by Lennon and McCartney. Meanwhile, Ringo struggled to find a place for himself in a band where his musical contribution was often minimal. There were days, Ringo confessed, when I didn't even want to go to the studio. George and I would barely look at each other. I was tired of feeling invisible. The filming of Let It Be in 1969 captured the strain vividly. Silent glances, short tempers, and moments when Ringo simply walked out, unable to handle the tension. What really broke Ringo's affection for George, however, came later when their personal lives became entangled. Ringo's then-wife, Maureen Starkey, became the subject of a brief romantic involvement on George's part in the early 1970s. Granted, George himself was married at that time to Pattie Boyd, but that revelation hit Ringo like a thunderbolt. "I felt betrayed," he admitted years